What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and today we're going to have a podcasty type of episode talking about Darkest Dungeon 2. I have no inside information for any of you, so don't think that I know something you don't. This is just things that I'm thinking about based on the evidence I've seen in the games and like some of the articles and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about that. And before we get started, obviously follow me on Twitch if you haven't. I stream usually 4 days a week. I took a couple days off this week, and join Discord if you haven't, and then support the channel on Patreon if you are interested. Alright, now that painful, awkward plugging of stuff is out of the way. So for Darkest Dungeon 2, I'm going to start with my predictions, and then I'm going to go into desired changes. I just have a few bit of notes here, just a couple pages, little bullet points, and let's see. To start with, my prediction, this is probably no shocker, is that all of the characters will not be returning, at least not at first. I think they may have said something as much in one of the interviews, I can't remember. But I am definitely certain that we're not going to start the game with like the 17/18 that we got before if you include Musketeer, and then they're just going to add stuff on top. That may happen, and that'd be interesting, but I kind of don't want it to happen because I'd rather get a chance to appreciate the new characters and not think about the old ones too much. And I kind of expect the old ones to come back either in future updates or potentially DLC. We'll see, because Red Hook isn't usually like one of those predatory companies with DLC. They just put out stuff they think is going to be fun that people will want to play. I don't think they're going to really milk it and go, yeah, you know, if you pay $5 you get all the old, or you get this old character, and if you pay $25 you get the whole pack kind of thing. They may do that, who knows, but I don't think they're going to do that. That's something else. Starting with characters that I don't think will return, I don't think this list of characters is coming back, at least right away. I don't think Vestal is coming. I don't think Flagellant's coming back. I don't think Shieldbreaker's going to come back. Bounty Hunter, Abomination, Antiquarian, Arbalest or Musketeer, and Jester. I think those characters are on the chopping block to either get heavily reworked and return later or just not be here at all. They may show up. I could just be entirely wrong. I want to make sure that everyone understands that I could just be 100% wrong on all this, but I'm going to try and justify why I think this. So with Vestal, I think that as a character in the original game, she's too consistent and easy to play for a great amount of value in a game that is about a lot of variance and forcing choices on the player. It's about risk and reward, and Vestal is very little risk for very high reward, so I don't think that she will make a return, at least not in the same iteration. I'm sure there will be some kind of other healing aspect, but I'm pretty certain that Red Hook is aware of how Vestal is kind of a crutch. Maybe she was designed that way, and she eclipses other healers specifically because of her group heal. So I could see her not coming back, or if she does, she's heavily reworked. The next character that I don't see coming back is Flagellant. He was a DLC hero. He's a very strong hero. I don't see any of the DLC stuff coming back, honestly, not right away. Shieldbreaker goes without saying. I don't think she's coming back. The reason is because, again, she was DLC, so she's not kind of like the core cast. And she's also very strong. She has a bit of a rough early game, but she becomes a very strong character overall by the end. And I don't think that Red Hook is going to put that kind of power level into the game again, unless they want another pay-to-win thing, which I call the, I guess, running joke. But there's some truth to it. Shieldbreaker's just a little overtuned. Bounty Hunter. Very, very cool class. I like Bounty Hunter a lot. I don't think he's as strong as some of the other characters. I've made that clear as an opinion, but I do like him, and I don't think he's going to come back because it seems like he hasn't gotten as much love as the other characters, so this is another reason I'm going to be talking about with some of the others. Bounty Hunter has some strange oversights, like he has 2 stuns but no class-based positive stun trinket. He has Wounding Helmet, which lowers the stun chance. That's just weird and not helpful. He doesn't have something that gives him bonus stun. The other reason is that his kit has a lot of bloat. There is overlap between a couple moves. He has 2 mark moves, he has 2 stun moves, and he has 2 melee moves that do almost the same ranges but have different different just damage types depending on what's happening. So finish him obviously gets bonus damage on stun, and then collect bounty, I forgot the name of it. Collect bounty gets bonus damage against humans and mark. So it seems like he has just like a bunch of moves that overlap each other, and then Caltrops is kind of the odd one out. So he has 2 mark moves, 2 stuns, 2 chops, And I really don't see him coming back because it just seems like Red Hook wasn't as interested in him, because you can kind of see which characters got a lot of love by comparison and which ones they were kind of confused about where to take them or just didn't care as much. And Bounty Hunter is the first one in this category. The next one in this category is Abomination. This character just feels all over the place. It's a character that has some pretty good stuff when it's in human form, and then he transforms, and then he does, you know, his melee stuff. He has Rake and Rage and all that. And with Abomination, it's weird because he gets Broken Key, which is obviously just way overstated. Like, that trinket is so absurdly powerful for a character like Abomination. I mean, just think about it on Plague Doctor 2. Just a dedicated stun trinket that's better than Blasphemous Vial in terms of just stun application. It would be absolutely amazing, and it's not range accuracy, so it would make Incision better. And I don't think Abomination's coming back, especially because not only the weird trinkets that he has, but also the fact that Abomination is pretty strangely overstated for a character that has doesn't feel like it has as much impact as some of the others. Like, Abomination has 9 speed, that's insane. Abomination has like, what, 11 to 20 damage? I think he has the second highest. It's absolutely nuts. His crit buff is more damage. He's the only character that gets it. And he's got some weird camp skills, so it didn't feel like Red Hook kind of quite understood where to take him. Like, they go, okay, he's got some like fast stunning aspects, he's got melee damage, he's got tanky aspects because of stuff like Eldritch Blood and Absolution, so it's kind of like a hybrid leper thing. I don't know. Like, in a lot of ways, not Bounty Hunter, Abomination is almost superior to leper, like, if built properly, but it's just too hard to get that out of him. And I don't think he's coming back for that reason, especially, well, I'm going to leave it there. But I just don't feel like Abomination's coming back. He feels like he's all over the place, and I don't see him getting fixed and being put in the next game. Antiquarian's another one I don't see coming back. Sorry, Antiquarian enthusiasts. But she was a later addition character, so I'm just following the trend that I've had where I don't think that the characters that aren't the core set of, gosh, what is it at that point? So we have Shieldbreaker, Antiquarian, Flage, Musketeer, so that's 4. So I think we start with 14. So I really don't see anyone outside the base 14 not coming back, besides a couple of those that I am naming. And Antiquarian, she's mostly there just for the money, and I don't think Red Hook really cares about her too much. It just, they gave her, you know, like, support moves and an awkward heal that's okay, and like some little damage that she can chip in with. And I think that Red Hook will probably figure out a different way to do gold acquisition, so you don't need a dedicated escort mission to make sure that it happens. I should say the final part of that, or like the conclusion of that idea, is that Antiquarian feels like a class that is primarily to generate money more than an actual hero. Like, the other characters feel like heroes. Antiquarian feels like just a money maker, and that's all she's there for. So I really think that they're just going to lean back into going with heroes instead of tools. Arbalest and Musketeer, I don't feel like they're coming back. The first reason is I've heard a rumor that since they have Marvin Seo, who is one of the prominent modders, and he made some very popular classes, since he's on board, I heard that they may make Falconer a canon class, which would be interesting, or at least some kind of dedicated archer, so I could see that. But aside from that rumor, the reason I feel like Arbalest won't come back in the regular game, or because of regular game reasons, is that her kit is just an absolute mess, and they've had like 4 or 5 years to fix it, and they just didn't. So Arbalest has this awkward mark that doesn't work like any other mark in the game. She misses simple things besides the Omni range mark. She's missing, like, her bandage can't cure bleed even though she's a field medic, and she has a camp skill that can cure bleed already. So I don't see why her bandage can't do it in battle. So that seems a little strange because, you know, the provision bandage can cure bleeds, and then not the hero with the bandage can cure bleeds. The other ones is just like some of her attack moves don't feel, like, Bola feels weird as a move. Blind Fire's also weird. Like, just the way her moves are designed. Like, the only ones that feel like a lot of thought was put into them was Sniper Shot, for obvious reasons. Rallying Flare feels like a lot of attention was put into that one, and then probably Suppressing Fire. I feel like those are the only moves where they really focused on making those, my phone just beeped, on making those, that threw me off. Anyway, those are the ones that feel useful. Like, they really made sure that those moves work and feel cohesive. The rest of the kit doesn't feel cohesive, and that's my main issue with Arbalest. I'm already starting to take a lot of time in this video. Jeez Louise. I was telling myself it'd only take 20 minutes. Alright, so yeah. So, Jester. I don't feel he's coming back because the same reason that Vestal is probably going to get the axe, or at least a big rework. Jester is too high value for the simplicity of the playstyle. It's literally smash ballad until you can snipe something with a bleed move, or if someone's over 30 stress, you use tune. And then you can build for finale, but you really don't need to. So that's my first reason I don't think he's coming back. The next one is that he's another character with some kit bloat, and he has Slice Off and Harvest that overlap like pretty bad. And I really don't understand the thinking between those two. Like, one is a slightly higher damage single target bleed, and the other is a lower damage cleave, but they have like the same ranks. Like, Slice Off can't even hit rank 1 or rank 4, or Harvest isn't a back row cleave. Like, I don't get it. I really feel like those two moves are just kind of lazy next to each other, and it should have just been one or the other. And because of that, I feel like Jester won't come back, or again, if he does, it's a heavy rework on top of it. Although, with the idea of reworks for characters, if they're going to do a heavy rework on any hero, I would rather they just axe the hero entirely and then just put the rework kit on top of someone new. You know, it can still have some vague shades of other stuff because they really cover a lot of options between all of the classes, so I really don't think we're going to get something that's just super new and groundbreaking without new mechanics being introduced. But it would be nice if they just made new stuff and gave them some love. So that's the predictions on who's coming and going. But for the rest of the characters, I think that Crusader will be in the game, because I think he's either Tyler's favorites or he's just like a character they greatly enjoy at the studio. But Crusader hasn't been in any of the trailers yet, so people are starting to think, okay, maybe he won't come back. And I think the Crusader is going to be kind of a plot point. Either the tutorial mission can be something dramatic, like you have Occultist and Leper and Man-at-Arms or something like that, and maybe Highwayman, and you're going to save Reynald the Crusader. I could see that happening. I could also see him being like a mission objective later, but I don't see you starting with him. You may very well, but I don't see it with him not being in the trailers. He's been noticeably absent. I think that's it for characters. So with the game itself, we spent the first game in the Hamlet and doing a bunch of, random, I should say procedurally generated dungeon delving. And I could see the sequel being a world map type of game because it kind of seems like the corruption's all over the place. I think it would be more likely to be seen as something like XCOM 2, or I think Battle Brothers potentially, and there are a lot of other games that follow this idea where you just have this region of towns and things that you're trying to control. I could definitely see that happening, and it'd be interesting if they even went a bit further with like an economy aspect. I don't think they would do that, but I could potentially see something like that. But I definitely feel like some kind of world map is going to be in the next game. Again, I could be wrong, but I feel like that's on the docket. And the reason for that type of thing, or some kind of base building aspect, the reason I'm thinking that is because recently in that Tyler Sigmund interview that was done with, I believe, Miss Gwen Frey, we listened to that on stream a week ago, and I think that in there she's talking to Mr. Sigmund about how he's a fan of Sid Meier's games. So Sid Meier does Civilization and some of the, I think he does other games too, but I definitely know the Civ games. I think we're all familiar with those. And there's a lot of, I want to say community building, but there's definitely a lot of just, nation building, just region building. Like, you build your settlements in those games, especially Civ 6. Civ 6 is more focused on building individual cities and stuff like that. So I could see the next game, if it does have some kind of world map aspect, I could see it like, okay, I have to build a blacksmith in this town, or I have to build a tavern in this town, kind of stuff, and it would just be something else that's fun to do. So I could see something like that happening. Quirks, I feel, will actually stay the same if they come back, because I think the quirk system is actually pretty good. I think just overall with like how you get them, the power level of quirks, I like the quirk system a lot, so I would like to see it come back, and I don't expect many changes if it does come back. Maybe tweak the math on how you get them and stuff like that, but I really don't see any overhaul coming to something like that if it does make a return. I see Curio returning as a system. Curio is very fun. I don't think that's going anywhere. Obviously, there will be different kinds of curio and what you do with them, but I definitely see that coming back. On the idea of curios as well, I could see more dungeon interactive stuff happening. Like if you're in the dungeon itself, and instead of interacting with curio, I could see some like door events that happen. You know, you walk down the hallway, you come to the door, and it's like you can scout it. Maybe roll a chance to scout would be interesting. And it'd be like, okay, you hear something behind the door, you hear nothing behind the door, there's a trap at the door's locked. Those are a lot of things that the player could interact with, and again, do more risk and reward thing, which I'm pretty sure the game will have more of because that's one of the core defining features. Those were my predictions, and now I'm going to talk about my desired changes for the game now that I've had some time to think about it and talk to some people. But these aren't in any particular order, these are just like how I wrote them down in my my notes page. So first, I would like to see some kind of move priority system, like certain moves that are lower impact can happen first, so you can choose like how you dictate battle and the pace of it. And this is a move priority system, kind of like Temtem, if anyone's played that. I like Temtem's move priority system quite a bit. I know that, I think in the interview, Tyler said that he doesn't like to look at too many other games for inspiration because he's too afraid of like copying them. So I definitely understand that. But I would like a priority system like that just because it makes speed less important. Because right now in Darkest Dungeon, the two most important stats are speed and accuracy. If you have speed to set up your strategy and go first and stop the enemy from doing stuff, then you're already winning. And if you have accuracy to make sure your stuff hits, you're already halfway to victory. I'm not even kidding. Speed and accuracy are like the two most important things, and afterwards like crit damage and stuff like that. But speed and accuracy are head and shoulders better stats than anything else, and I would like to see them not as important in this because in most RPGs they're just always important, so it'd be nice to have something different. The next change is in regards to gear. So I think armor is going to have some baseline protection values and not just dodge and HP, even though those kind of translate to, you know, armor. But the reason the dodge is important on armor, people go like, okay, why does Crusader have 25 dodge or whatever he has at, you know, max level? And it's more of an armor class system. If you've ever played tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, armor class is like your chance to be hit. So you have to roll and, you know, you get your bonuses and you see if you beat their armor class. And dodge operates that way in the game, so that's why it's kind of like this encompassing stat where it's like, yeah, my armor's so protective I don't get hit, or I'm naturally so evasive that I also don't get hit. And I think that dodge does cover both of those, which is why, even though it seems weird that each armor gets an increase in HP and dodge, I think that's the reason why. It's based off an armor class system. So I would like to see more dials to turn and levers to pull on armor. So that means that something like protection would be cool, and it would make a lot of sense. I think people wouldn't be as confused as to why, you know, Crusader has higher dodge than like Plague Doctor. I'm pretty sure he has more than Plague Doctor, which is freaking sad, so there you go. The next change I'd like to see is enemies that could cure themselves more frequently of status, like, you know, debuffs and bleed, or mark would be interesting. Like if enemies could just take mark off themselves, that'd be really fun and interactive and probably frustrating at the same time. And the reason I say this is because I feel like the enemies in the game are very akin to, again, tabletop enemies, where if you've ever played a tabletop game, you may have noticed this. I noticed this the most when I started DMing 5th edition for Dungeons and Dragons. I noticed that like every stat block I looked at for monsters and whatever, they're just filled to the brim with combat moves. Like when you build a character in these games, you take some like combat stuff, you take some social stuff, because you still have to role play and, like, you know, talk to the tavern owner for information. You have to be able to do that. And in these games, since it's more combat focused, the enemies even ignore the need to have more support moves or heal themselves. Like, the enemy can play like they don't have to survive, and they can just load up on combat moves. And I actually don't like that too much, because, you know, you have like sword bandits that have 4 attack moves. You have like every enemy just has a bunch of attack moves. There are only a few supports. So I'd like to see things like, I don't know, supplies on some of the enemies, like a Cultist Brawler that's bleeding can use a bandage, or maybe Cultist Witch can heal him. Those things would be interesting. It would just give more things for the player to interact with than I stun the enemy because they're going to punch me in the face, and stunning them stops that, and then I kill them afterwards. I'd like to see more to the gameplay than having to focus on that. The next change, please let someone cure debuff. I don't think anyone can cure debuff in the game besides medicinal herbs, and I would like it if someone could cure debuff with a move. Please, let it happen. Next change, change how bosses spawn in dungeons. Right now, it's very formulaic. The boss always spawns in the furthest room, and then if there is a tie for which room is furthest, they spawn in the room, I believe that's to the lower version first, and then like to the right after that. So it's always like the furthest bottom right room. It might be right first, then bottom after, but regardless, they always spawn in the farthest room and the lowest room. And I would like that change to be more random, because it's too easy now, if you know how bosses spawn, to go find them and like cut half of the rooms out of a mission sometimes. The other option to that is to make every boss dungeon a static mission, so it's the same map that doesn't change, and this way the player always has to go through the same challenges, and they don't have to worry about, like, you know, I got a super easy dungeon with the boss. Like, if I do a Warren's boss and I get a grid pattern, which usually do get those, and I can cut off, no joke, like 8 rooms out of the 12, then that's fantastic. Or sometimes you get a really nice wheeled dungeon where you have like 4 rooms going to the right and then 6 to the left. So you go, okay, it's obviously the 6 to the left, and you just go that way and skip half the dungeon. So I'd like it if it changed and it wasn't as formulaic and a little more random, because that would keep the player on their toes and you still have to be prepared. Next change, please give buffs for the player to reduce crits received. We have a couple things right now. Actually, I think we have one. I think it's smoke screen, but we can lower the enemy's chance to crit us, which is nice. But it would just be nice to be able to fix getting crit, because crits, this is kind of a dual change. Crits are just too powerful in general, and I'd like them to be toned down. They're so swingy. Like, the enemy critting you twice back to back is such a different game. And the frequency of crits, especially in like Blood Moon and then Torchless, it gets way too high. Like, the enemies can get up to 20%, 25% pretty routinely for crit rates, and that's not good. It's not fun. So I like it if it got toned down. They actually got buffed. Crits didn't used to be as powerful as they are, I think, and then especially on the player side, and they just got even stronger. And I would rather not play an RPG where like crit is like the stat to get, because there are a lot of games where crit fishing or just doing max crit chance and crit damage and stuff like that is a good strat. I'd like that to not be the case for once, but who knows. The next change is definitely a player side nerf, and I would like the strength and frequency of stuns to be toned down severely in the next game, because right now stuns in the original game, or the first game I should say, are just way too powerful. There are too many of them. Too many characters have stuns, and all of them are good. Even the worst stuns are still good because they still take actions from the enemies, and I would like it if they were not as powerful or common as they currently are. It's something they've never been able to get the balance right properly. Like, they've nerfed stun trinkets, they've buffed stun resist, they've done tweaks here and there. Like, they've always worked on stuns, but stuns are still just too powerful. They are the go-to strategy. So if they could do something else, like some other interesting strategy, or just lower stuns and make them, for one, not as strong and make them premium, then I'd be very happy with that. Another change I would like is if there's some kind of like consumable crafting, or like brewing potions, or just crafting in general. Crafting is pretty fun in a lot of cases. Sometimes some games overdo it and it's like tedious and not fun, but I think Red Hook could get it right. So I'd like to see them add some kind of crafting system. So that's another thing you have to deal with when you're in missions. You don't have to just worry about loot, and really just loot and supplies. Those are the only two things you have to worry about. It'd be nice if you have to worry about loot, supplies, heirlooms if those come back, and then like materials. So there's just more things to play with, more choices, because like I said, the game is very predicated on your choices. So anything that gives you more options or more chances to make choices is welcome. For bases like towns and hamlets and whatnot, I would like to see more things to do in the towns besides upgrading facilities and stress healing and then like curing disease or locking quirks. I'd like to see more stuff there. I don't know exactly what those would be. Maybe some like just in-town events, because we already have town events, but just things like, I don't know, there's a fight at the local tavern, and then you can choose to ignore it or you can choose to break it up. And then if you go in there to break it up, you have to take like 2 of your units, and they have to fight like, you know, 2 rowdy patrons, and they have to like not die to them or something. And I think that'd be interesting. It'd be fun. So just more stuff to do in town that's not upkeep, pretty much. My next change that I want to see is going to impact some players very heavily, and that's going to not impact the majority of players because they don't do this. But I would like it if you could not change skills mid-dungeon. And I'm going to tell you why. So right now, you can pick 4 skills when you're fighting, unless you're Abomination. He gets all 7. And you can swap skills as needed. So if you're going, okay, I'm getting beat up, so I need to switch to this for this next fight. Especially like stress healing, that's a big one to do. Or if your character has a heal, you can take it off for one fight and then put it on for the next fight. The reason I would like to see skills be locked is because you can change them for free at any time, but you can't have all 7 on. That makes no sense to me. Why can Hellion know how to charge and do breakthrough in the hallway fight, and then when I get to the fight in the room that's right after that, I can take breakthrough off and just put on bleed out or something? Why is it that she can choose, okay, I'm not going to charge anymore, but now I know how to hit things really hard and make it bleed for a lot of damage? Why do I get to make that choice? That's so random. I almost think it's an oversight, but I would like it if that just went away, because it would make choices more harder, or more difficult, I should say, for the player on what moves they take, and then you're stuck with them. The other side of that is sometimes you can be like me, where you're just, you know, a dummy, and you forgot to put skills on when you go into the dungeon, so you just go into some fights, or I should say some missions, and you have like 3 skills on instead of 4, so that would definitely punish people like me. But either way, I would still like to see it. Trinkets. I think there's a lot more we can do with trinkets. For instance, I think it would be very cool if some of the trinkets modified the properties to moves right now, because we have stuff like Top Shelf Tonic, which increases, I think, the blight duration for Plague Darts on Grave Robber. So we have stuff that can already manipulate how the skills work, but it would be nice if that went a bit further. Some of it could just be absolutely broken, right? There could be things such as if you had, I don't know, Duelist Advance or Breakthrough. Let's just use Breakthrough. If there's a trinket that made Breakthrough go from forward 1 to forward 3, I think Breakthrough become a lot better. And it could do something like Breakthrough goes forward 3 but does 10% damage. So you just take all the damage off Breakthrough, even though it wouldn't really make sense, but it'd be more of a balancing feature, and you just charge 3 spaces and put Hellion back up to the front. That kind of stuff would be interesting. Obviously you have to keep the power levels in check, but it would just be more things to do, more fun to have, more ways to customize kits, and more ways for the player to get stuff out of the game and feel like they're really putting thought into what they're doing and winning because of it. The other example I had for that is if Grave Robber's Lunge could go, instead of 2 spaces, it could go 1. Like a forward 1 lunge would be so broken. Some people have an idea of how busted that would be, but it would be so good, and I'd like to see that. More status effects, please. I think in Butcher Circus, they got it right with Daze. I think Daze is a very interesting mechanic. So it'd be nice if more mechanics came to the game. Obviously, it can get a little out of hand, and sometimes you'd have like 1,000 things that can happen, you know, in terms of the mechanics. Like if the resistance page was, you know, doubled, I think that'd be too much to think about. But it would still be nice if there's, you know, 1 or 2 things, maybe take away Blight and add, you know, other stuff. I don't know, but it would be nice, it'd be fun, and again, just more things for the player to think about. My next change is, I think, an important one. I would like to see the player get corpses on their side, because right now, obviously the monsters get corpses, so if you kill their frontliners, their backliners are still safe. However, if the player loses frontliners, their backliners are screwed. So you actually want to lose your backliners before your frontliners in most fights, if you do have people dying, just because you don't get screwed as hard. And I think it would make sense if the player got corpses. There needs to be some way for the player to hold position if they're losing people. And this example, I think, will drive that idea home. So think about if you're just in a fight in whatever, you know, location, and let's say that the player kills the 2 frontline enemies for the enemy party, and the enemies kill the 2 frontliners for your party. So all of a sudden, your Vestal's in rank 1, and then, I don't know, your Grave Robber or whoever is in rank 4, maybe an Arbalest, although you don't usually run those 2 together. You can, but you don't. Either way, like, would it make sense if the backline of the enemies is up in rank 1 and 2, and then your Arbalest and Vestal or whatever are in rank 1 and 2, and suddenly none of them can shoot each other. That doesn't make sense from the tactical standpoint, because if the ranged units are up for both sides in an actual like field of battle, they would be finding cover and still shooting at each other. They wouldn't just all of a sudden be stuck in melee range trying to hit each other with moves that they can't access. It doesn't make sense. So there needs to be some way for the player to maintain positioning, either via corpses, which the enemy can manipulate by attacking them or using corpse destruction moves, or maybe you can make cover. Something like Warsaw is interesting in that regard. You can make cover and hold your positions. So I would just like something in that regard to affect the player, because I think it's just inconsistent in terms of mechanics as it is now. Sorry, I need to finish that thought. Like the idea of corpses or cover or whatever for the player is not inconsistent. The fact that the player gets none of those, that is inconsistent. A cosmetic change here. It'd be very cool if the player got extra skins that weren't just palette swaps for the characters. Instead of having to like download mods or whatever, it'd be nice if the characters could just swap the way they look. They don't have to just swap colors and stuff. I realize that's a lot more work for the art team, because obviously you have to draw the new assets for the like how they look. You have to animate how all these look. So it's definitely a lot of work. I'm not denying that. So I understand why they went with palette swaps, but in terms of like the fun factor, it would definitely be fun to swap how characters look. Everyone would have their favorite, and then you have some palettes for those, and there's some ideas out there that are pretty cool. One I thought of that I really like is, instead of Plague Doctor having the full, you know, robe and mask setup, it'd be very awesome if she could have a different outfit. Like, instead of the hood and the doctor mask and all that, even though that is very thematic for her character, it'd be very cool if she could like take the hood off and have like really thick goggles or something, you know, just some other scientific looking getup. I would like that quite a bit. So hopefully they do something like that, but I'm sure that if they don't, you know, modders, if they get in there, they'll do something. But it would be nice if stuff like that was in the base game. After playing Battle Brothers for quite a while, I think it would be interesting if there was other systems for how damage translates, maybe an injury system. It's pretty destructive in Battle Brothers. There are some injuries, like, you know, if you get them on the first hit or something, it's just that unit is pretty, you know, messed over and not doing much after that. So we already have critical hits that extend blight durations and stuff, or increase status chance by 20%, but I think there's still more space for stuff to happen when you take damage. The final change is a bit of a pushback on things, or this one idea I keep hearing from people, and that I'm not trying to say that they can't have it, right? If it was in the game, I would play it for sure, but I'm going to argue against it anyway, and that is the idea of a traditional mage class. Occultist is actually a mage class already, but people have said things like, why can't we have, you know, some kind of wizard that throws fireballs? Again, if it was in the game, I would play it, but I don't think that that type of character fits the setting. In Darkest Dungeon, the characters that have magical powers are either those that worship God, or they have done some kind of eldritch pact, or some weird sacrificial ritual to gain those powers. Like Antiquarian, I think, did a blood sacrifice. Occultist, I read his origin comic before I made this video, and I can't quite tell how he did it, besides the fact that there were other people that tried to do what he did, and there were, you know, some ancient scribblings that he followed. Otherwise, the idea of magic, it's supposed to be very obscure, hard to get, and it comes with like this massive inherent risk. So I think just some wizard that reads books and comes in and throws fireballs is against the nature of the universe. Although I would like it. I'm not going to deny that I would like to play something like that, but I don't think that it fits. So if something like that came in the game, I would wish they have some kind of justification, because right now I don't think it fits. Alright, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Next up, I'm actually not sure. I'm still going through my video scripts and stuff like that on ideas. It's whatever just tickles my fancy at the time. I already got a comment asking about the leper guide. The leper guide is soon, TM, I would say about 2 or 3 weeks, and that's if I get started now. I kind of have. I've already written some stuff, but I really haven't done much since then. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you like what you saw, obviously hit the like. Let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments, and follow me on Twitch if you haven't. Join Discord, support on Patreon. all that awesome stuff. I think you're all beautiful. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.